There's a moment that sneaks up on people. It doesn't come with panic or drama or sirens. It's quiet. You're sitting somewhere ordinary. A couch, a kitchen chair, your bed. You open your banking app and the number looking back at you feels wrong. Not low enough to be a crisis, not high enough to relax, just wrong. Because you recognize that number, you worked years for it, you crossed the line. 6 figures, $100,000 a year. That number was supposed to be heavy, reassuring, final. It was supposed to close the chapter on stress, but instead, it opens a new one. A chapter filled with questions you didn't expect to be asking. Questions like, why do I still feel tight? Why am I thinking about money more, not less? Why does one unexpected expense still shake me? These aren't reckless people. These aren't gamblers. These are careful people. People who delayed gratification. People who said no in their 20s. People who did the thing everyone said would work. College, career, climb, and yet something feels off. Before we go any further, this is Donki. If you want calm, honest explanations about money, you're in the right place. Let me stay with this moment a little longer. Because this feeling doesn't come from poverty, it comes from contradiction. On paper, you're winning. In real life, you're bracing. That gap between what should feel true and what does feel true creates a special kind of anxiety. Not fear, confusion. And confusion is exhausting. People don't talk about this stage. They skip it. They jump straight to advice. Budget better. Invest earlier. Stop ordering food. But advice only works when the diagnosis is right. And this diagnosis usually isn't. So let's slow down. Let's not fix anything yet. Let's just observe. Think back to when you first heard the number, 100,000. It probably wasn't in a spreadsheet. It was in a sentence. Once you make 6 figures, that sentence never finished. It didn't need to. The meaning was implied. Safety, stability, arrival. That idea didn't come from math. It came from culture. From the 1990s. Back then, $100,000 wasn't just income. It was separation. It separated renters from owners, stress from breathing room, worry from confidence. It was the line where problems stopped multiplying, and that meaning got passed down. Parents repeated it. Teachers repeated it. Movies repeated it. The number became a symbol, but symbols age badly. Because while the symbol stayed the same, the world didn't. Prices didn't politely wait. They crept, then accelerated. Housing moved first, then healthcare, then education. Slowly, silently, the cost of a normal life inflated. But the number didn't update. So now we're chasing something frozen in time. And that's where the first crack appears. You reach the number, but the feeling doesn't arrive. You assume the problem is you. Maybe you're bad with money. Maybe you didn't feel grateful enough. Maybe you just need one more raise. That's the lie that keeps people running. Because once you cross into 6 figures, something subtle changes. You don't notice it right away. Your paycheck goes up, but not by what you expected. Taxes bite harder. You shrug. That's normal. Then something disappears. A deduction you used to have, a credit that quietly phased out. No alert, no warning. You're now too rich for it. And that word rich feels strange. Because you don't feel rich, you feel exposed. The raise didn't give you margin, it gave you responsibility. Banks start trusting you more. That sounds good, until you realize trust comes with expectations. They don't ask, can you afford this? They say, you qualify. Landlords adjust their prices. Schools adjust their assumptions. The system begins pricing you differently, not because you're wealthy, but because you're visible. And socially, things shift too. No one sits you down and says, you need to upgrade your life now. It's softer than that. It's implied. You're a professional now. You can't drive that old car forever. You can't live in that small place forever. You can't say no to certain things anymore. Not because you want them, but because everyone assumes you already said yes. This is where expenses stop being choices. They become defaults. Each upgrade feels reasonable on its own. A safer car, a nicer place, a better neighborhood. But together, they change your center of gravity. Your income goes up. Your fixed costs rise faster. And suddenly, your life requires momentum. You can't slow down anymore. Then there's time. People don't price time correctly. They don't notice when it disappears. High-paying jobs don't usually steal your hours all at once. They leak into your evenings, your weekends, your head. You're always reachable, always on. You don't clock out, you fade out. And when time becomes scarce, money steps in to compensate. not in fun ways, in quiet ways. Food delivery because you're tired, cleaning because you're behind, subscriptions because you're numb. This isn't luxury, it's maintenance. You're paying to keep functioning, and this is where the feeling deepens. You're earning more, but you feel less free, because now losing this job would hurt, not emotionally, structurally. The mortgage depends on it, the payments depend on it, the lifestyle depends on it. You start noticing something unsettling. You can't leave, not easily, not without panic. The job owns more of you than you expected, and that's when a quiet fear creeps in. Not the fear of being broke, the fear of being stuck. This is where people start comparing themselves, not upward, downward. They notice someone earning less, who looks calmer, who sleeps, who can quit. That's confusing, because we were taught the opposite. More money equals more safety. But the evidence doesn't line up, and this is the moment where most people make a mistake. They assume the answer is more income, one more promotion, one more bump, because the system trained them to think that way. But what if income isn't the lever? What if income is just speed? You can run very fast and still be on a treadmill. You can sweat, strain, exhaust yourself, and go nowhere. Wealth isn't how fast money moves through your hands, it's how much stays. And right now, something is stripping that away. Quietly, systematically. This isn't about laziness or irresponsibility. It's about a structure that looks generous from a distance, but tightens as you climb. So here's the question we have to sit with, not answer yet, just sit with. If $100,000 no longer creates safety, if earning more doesn't automatically reduce fear, then what is actually keeping people trapped, and what would real freedom even look like? Hold that, because the answer isn't what most people expect. Let's go back to the feeling. That quiet pressure, not panic, not crisis, just the sense that something is off. Because when people hit six figures and still feel trapped, the instinct is to look forward. The next raise, the next roll, the next upgrade. But the real answer isn't forward, it's sideways. To see it, we have to unlearn something that feels very obvious. We were taught that money works like water. More coming in means more available, but money doesn't behave like water, it behaves like oxygen. When you have just enough, you don't notice it. When it's barely sufficient, it dominates your thoughts. And when your entire environment depends on it continuing without interruption, you panic at the idea of losing it. That's the part most people miss. Safety isn't about income, it's about dependency. Let me explain this gently. Imagine two people. One earns $60,000, the other earns $120,000. The second person looks better by every external measure, but look closer. The first person has low fixed costs, rent they can adjust, a car they own outright, a life that bends. They don't love their job, but they could leave. The second person earns twice as much, but their life is rigid. Mortgage, leases, commitments built on the assumption that income will never pause. If it does, everything shakes. That's not wealth, that's fragility. High income with high dependency is a brittle structure. It looks strong until stress hits it. This is why so many high earners feel anxious even when nothing is wrong. Their margin is thin, and margin is the real currency of peace. Margin is what lets you breathe. Margin is what lets you say no. Margin is what lets you pause without everything collapsing. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, because most people assume margin comes from earning more, but margin usually comes from spending less than you're allowed to. That sounds simple. It isn't, because the system is very good at convincing you that your current lifestyle is normal, reasonable, deserved. Banks don't push you past the edge. They guide you right to it. They approve you for the maximum payment that keeps you compliant, not comfortable, compliant. And socially, you're surrounded by people doing the same thing, so it feels safe, until it doesn't. This is where the real trap reveals itself. The middle class isn't squeezed because they're irresponsible. They're squeezed because they are the only group expected to fully fund their own lives and the system around them. They don't receive meaningful subsidies anymore. They don't receive the advantages of capital. They pay retail for everything. Taxes at full price, debt at full interest, housing at inflated values. And on top of that, they're encouraged to signal success, to prove they belong. This is where Donki wants you to slow down again, because this part isn't about numbers, it's about identity. Once you attach your identity to your income, you lose leverage. You start spending to protect the image, not because you want to, but because stepping down feels like failure. This is why people upgrade houses when they get raises, not because the old place stopped working, but because staying feels like admitting the raise didn't change them. The system feeds on that discomfort. It wants you to externalize success, because external success is expensive and predictable, but internal safety, that's invisible and hard to sell. So let's talk about the thing no one brags about: optionality. Optionality is boring on Instagram, but it's powerful in real life. Optionality means you can lose income and stay calm. It means you can walk away from bad situations. It means time works for you again. Most people don't lack income, they lack optionality. And optionality is created by one thing: a gap. A gap between what you earn and what you spend. That gap is uncomfortable because it feels like restraint, like you're not enjoying your success. But that gap is where freedom lives. Now here's the quiet realization that changes everything. If you make $100,000 and live like you make 50, that $50,000 gap becomes leverage. Not overnight, slowly, quietly. It accumulates, and this is where most people sabotage themselves. They see extra money as permission, permission to upgrade, permission to expand. But permission is exactly what keeps them trapped, because expenses don't scale down easily. Income can disappear in a month. Expenses linger for years. So Donki wants to reframe something. Scarcity is usually painful, but chosen scarcity is powerful. Artificial scarcity. You intentionally restrict lifestyle expansion. You don't let your expenses know about your raise. You pretend it never happened, because once money touches your checking account, it becomes emotional. You see it, you justify it, you absorb it. So instead, you hide it, not from others, from yourself. Automatic investing, automatic separation. Money that never becomes available can't be spent. This isn't discipline, it's architecture. You don't rely on willpower, you change the structure. And here's the part that takes time to accept. The goal isn't to feel rich. The goal is to feel unafraid. That's a very different target. Feeling rich pushes you to consume. Feeling unafraid pushes you to simplify. This is why some people earning less feel lighter. They don't need the number to keep climbing. Their lives don't demand constant motion. They're not running a machine that requires full speed at all times. And slowly, something shifts. When your expenses stay low and your income rises, the power dynamic flips. Your job stops owning you. Money stops yelling at you. Time returns. And the strange part, your happiness doesn't drop. It stabilizes. Because most of the upgrades people chase don't actually add peace. They add complexity, maintenance, anxiety. Freedom comes from reducing the number of things that can hurt you. This is why Donki doesn't tell people to chase wealth aggressively. He tells them to protect margin aggressively. Margin is quiet. It doesn't announce itself, but it changes how you walk into a room. You speak differently to your boss when you don't need the paycheck. You make better decisions when fear isn't steering. You stop confusing growth with expansion. And this is the real aha. Late, subtle, uncomfortable. The system isn't broken. It's working as designed. It rewards people who stay dependent and quietly punishes people who build slack. So the rebellion isn't earning more, it's needing less. That doesn't mean living poorly. It means living deliberately, refusing upgrades that don't add freedom, refusing pressure disguised as success, redefining what middle class even means, not consumption, optionality. The true flex in this economy isn't the car, it's the pause, the ability to stop, to think, to choose. And once that clicks, the confusion fades. The number stops lying, because you're no longer asking it to do something it can't. Money can't give you safety by itself, but margin can. And margin is something you build quietly, patiently, without applause. That's why so few people do it, and that's why it works. Donki will leave you with this thought. Pay attention not to how much money passes through your hands, but to how much sticks, because that's the part that belongs to you, and the more of it you keep, the less afraid you become. That's the real finish line. Not a number, but the moment money stops controlling your choices,